Welcome back, everybody, to another exciting episode of Sports World with Patrik, where we dive into the world of sports with some of the most interesting people in the industry. I'm your host, Patrik, and today I'm thrilled to have with me a very special guest. Joining me is Matt Funk, the head coach of the boys hockey team at Cretin-Derham Hall, one of the top high school hockey programs in the state of Minnesota. Coach Funk, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Patrik.
It's great to have you on now, Matt. You've been with Cretin-Derham for a while, for quite some time, and you've seen your team go through some incredible seasons. Before we dive into the specifics of the program and your coaching philosophy, let's start with your journey. How did you first get involved in coaching, and what led you to Cretin-Derham Hall?
Yep. So my family has long been educators and coaches. So I grew up in Minnesota. My dad he was a college hockey coach assistant at the University of St. Thomas, and then was a longtime high school head coach. So he coached at St. Thomas Academy, then St. Paul Central, which is a public school here in Minnesota. So I grew up in that household. Me and my brother and my sister, we all played sports. I played 3 sports in high school: football, hockey, and baseball, and then went to the University of Notre Dame, where I played club hockey. Notre Dame also every dorm had their own intramural sports team, so I played full contact, full pad football at Notre Dame. We played against each other's dorms. We had coaches and all that kind of stuff. So sports were always a big part of my life. And in the summers, I was a counselor when I was younger at Minnesota hockey camps in Minnesota. And then in college, I got into coaching with a local legend, Mike Foley, who ran a camp in St. Paul. I coached there. Upon graduation, I coached youth hockey in St. Paul, Bantams and Pee-wees. And then about 4 years after college, I was a JV coach at St. Thomas Academy, my alma mater, for 10 years. Then went to St. Paul Academy as assistant varsity coach, took over their program, coached there for 3 years. And then I came to Cretin-Derham Hall 7 years ago as the varsity head coach. So for me, coaching's always been in my blood. I was doing it and also working at Target Corporation for 22 years. And then 3 years ago, I made the decision to transition to the athletic director here at Cretin-Derham Hall as well. So I'm the boys hockey coach at Cretin-Derham Hall and athletic director at Cretin-Derham Hall.
That's obviously awesome. Cretin-Derham Hall is known for producing some incredible talent, and the hockey program has been a staple of the high school hockey excellence in Minnesota. What would you say is the foundation of the program's success, and how do you approach building a team each and every single season?
Well, for us, it's like you said, Cretin-Derham Hall has got a rich legacy in athletics, and it's a very good school as well. And so I think we're lucky here at CDH, where we have 93% of our student population plays this sport before they graduate. We have a school of 922 students, 9 through 12. And so we've got, good sports teams across the board. So what I think is nice about the hockey team fitting into that culture is they're surrounded by athletes that perform at the highest level in their sport. A lot of them are multi-sport athletes, but they're at a school that challenges them academically, spiritually, socially. We have 133 different middle schools that feed our high school. So it's not like they're coming and they know a lot of kids coming in a lot of cases. For us in the hockey program, it's carrying that championship culture. It's building student athletes that are committed to all phases of their life. We have a motto on our team is how you do anything is how you do everything. And so meaning that you can't just expect to be a good hockey player and, don't show up and be a good student. Don't show up and be a good brother or sister. Don't show up and be a good son, daughter, whatever it is. So like for us, it's about, committing to what we're doing, working hard to your individual and team goals, and the success will carry forward.
Now, obviously, it sounds like you guys focus a lot on the character of both on and off the ice of these players. And that's a philosophy I think a lot of people can get behind. Now, when we talk about the high school hockey scene in Minnesota, it's such a competitive and passionate environment, with the XL Center selling out every single year for the Minnesota high school tournament, how do you manage the pressure of competing at such a high level while needing your players to focus on their long-term goals?
Yeah, I think we're lucky in Minnesota. The model is one of the only models like we have left in the hockey world. So I know there's other states that do it pretty well with Massachusetts and Michigan, but Minnesota really is the model, and where we have still kind of that hometown team model. And so for us, the goal, obviously, I can give you some coach speak and tell you that we don't talk about going to the X every year. And really, we try not to focus on that. Our focus is, developing each and every one of our 40 players that are in the program, making sure that they're the best versions of themselves. And we know based off of our track record, if we get everybody maximizing their potential in the roles that they're trying to play, that we'll end up where we want to be. And we went to the state tournament the last 3 out of the 4 years. This year, we suffered a little bit of a heartbreaker to our rival in the section final, losing in double overtime. But I think that'll make us hungrier coming back next year and wanting to get that and reach that ultimate goal of getting to the X.
And I know developing players, particularly in high school, is not very easy to do. I know because a lot of high school students, they tend to, feel the pressure of school definitely once you hit the junior year because you are trying to get into the school that you love. So that sort of, I do have this question because it's always been an interesting question that I've gotten asked a few times over the summer where because I normally go to the World Junior Showcase in Michigan, and you see some of these players who they're just coming up, they're playing U16, U17, U18, and they're trying to make the national team. And I know there's a lot of pressure on that too. I know Minnesota typically does, have a good amount on the roster of players on the roster in general. But how do you prepare your students during the season, to meet those expectations that they're expecting to have at the end of the year when they go to college?
I think that's a really good question in terms of, I think our hockey athletes, any athlete today, but the hockey world is just more complicated and different. And so these kids are being pulled in multiple directions, and they may or may not have family advisors that are trying to help them in their hockey careers and tell them what they need to do. And so unlike a basketball or baseball, which is, a normal track where they're going to play high school for their 4 years and then go off to their college. Hockey's a little bit different when you have junior hockey in a landscape that is complicated for families and individuals. And so there's always this pressure on them. Do I need to leave high school early and go play juniors, or, what's the best route for me? And I think for us as a coaching staff, it's having these, conversations with kids, meet them where they're at, talk to them, give them feedback. We do it, we have scheduled 3 times a year. We have summer training. After summer training, we have an exit interview where we talk to each of the individuals about their game, where they need to work on, where we see them, what their role is going to be. Then we do it after tryouts. We talk to all the kids, every kid in the program, the same kind of thing. We do it at Christmas time, about halfway through, and then right before playoffs, we have these same conversations. But I think today's day and age, more than ever, you have to have these conversations, and it doesn't help to sugarcoat it. So you need to make sure that you're being honest in their feedback, because for us, there's 62 Division I college hockey programs, and for our student athletes, it's telling them, focus on the grades first. I mean, if you have over a 3.7 GPA, most likely all 62, if you're good enough, all 62 of those colleges are in play. The lower that GPA, the smaller that college selection gets. And so focusing there first, making sure everything's right there. And then with the hockey stuff, it's making sure you're focusing on skill and player development, what role and what coaches are hearing or telling you, and kind of where they see them at the next level. Because not everybody's going to be at the defenseman, not everybody's going to be Cale Makar, but Devon Tays and some of these other guys that don't have the skill set that Cale have made long careers by being really good, fundamentally sound, good stick defensemen. And so it's having those conversations with the individuals, like, be happy with who you are and the type of player you are, and make sure that you maximize that skill set. Now, there's always skills that you can work on. But I think that's the most important thing when you're dealing with a high school athlete.
And obviously, development for players definitely when they're at the high school level, and with the way that Durham Hall has been, getting players ready to play at the college level, that it's very important, definitely in a state like Minnesota, where Minnesota has so many colleges you can go to within the state to play for, including like St. Cloud, Minnesota, St. Thomas, Mankato, and Bemidji. Obviously mentioning this, Cretin-Derham Hall has produced several players that have gone on to play in hockey in college and both at the professional level. What has been your approach when it comes to helping your players prepare for that next step in their hockey careers?
Yeah, I think for us, I have my assistant coach, Nico Kapitanovic, harps on this all the time. We need to play a game that's translatable. And so for us, it'd be really easy. And I'm not saying this is the wrong approach, it's just not our approach. There are teams that have had a lot of success with their system and getting their players to play in that system. For us, it's about, if we're really going to develop next level college players, it's about maximizing their potential and how they fit. So we play a game that's highly translatable to the college game, to the pro game. We have really good defensive end structure. We play with good sticks. We play a possession type game where we're constantly attacking the middle, but we're putting our players in roles that translate to that next level. So playing a game that's relentless, focusing, a little thing, Patrik, that we talk about all the time is like being a good teammate and body language. It matters. Like that's what the college coaches, college scouts, junior scouts, they all have a tough job because the game of hockey's really improved and there's a lot of really good hockey players out there. So they're trying to find that tiebreaker in a lot of these kids. And so we're harping on our guys to make sure that some of those tiebreakers that are very visible at a hockey game aren't coming and showing in a negative way. So making sure that you have a bad shift, you flush it, and you move on to the next. You're there for your teammates, and working on that side of your game as well.
Coach Funk, and I do have this question to add on to this because I know how important it can be in high school, because I know everything, as I keep mentioning, everything comes to you right at the end. I remember, I want to say I was a freshman, or no, I was a junior in high school, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna have all the time in my life to choose which college to go to. But I also saw some of my classmates back then struggle with who were athletes who struggled with doing their homework, but they also were struggling mentally, sort of trying to get ready for when they did end up going to college. What do you think has been the key thing for you in developing players to have a strong mental game, given how mentally tough and physically tough hockey is?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things with that is like number one, I think we're lucky with the type of school that we're at. We're a college prep school, and so the environment that these kids are in day out is focused on making them or helping them achieve their best self. And so it goes with, the parents are committed to their development, the community here at school, teachers and faculty and staff are challenging them on a daily basis to make sure they stay on top of what they need to get done here. But then within the game itself, again, it's like I'm a strong believer in communication, both constructive feedback. So if those bad habits are creeping, it's making sure that we're making them aware of it, doing that in a way that's not, public shaming or anything like that, but in a way that's constructive. And then also highlighting the little wins that are out there. Kids in today's day and age, I don't want to go too far, but there is a ton of pressure and most of those are coming from external sources. And so it's making sure that they enjoy where they're at. They feel part of it, they feel valued, and we're doing that on a daily basis.
And obviously, Coach Funk, as you mentioned, communication is one of the key things you have in your coaching philosophy. Um, and I know sometimes it's a two-way street with communication. The player has to be able to receive it, and the coach has to be able to give it to the player. How important have you seen communication to be with your team there at Durham Hall for how the team can be successful in a year? Because I've talked to Over in Minnesota, I've talked to the women's head coach, Brad Frost, and of course, in Adina, I talked to the football coach. He said, communication is a very important part, and that's what has helped, them become as successful as they have been. And obviously, there at Cretin-Derham Hall, you guys have been also successful with that. But how important was that communication?
It's vital. I think it starts. You have to model it with your assistants, and so I think for me, when I was a younger coach, you kind of want to do everything, and you have your hands in every situation as a head coach, but you need to empower your assistants and be on the same page. And so, like, for me, it's never been about having assistants that just fall in line and repeat kind of my goals and visions. It's more about we're meeting on a daily, weekly basis on kind of what we're seeing with the team, thoughts we have. And so my assistants are giving me the feedback, whether it be the two JV assistants that are telling me, who are the guys that are next in line, who are they seeing? Because we're watching the games up top, but they see them every day at practice. But then it's my varsity assistants too on giving them a voice. And so oftentimes if you would walk into our locker room during the year or somebody new from the outside, you would sometimes think Nico's the head coach. Sometimes you would think, it's not that clear all the time, but that's how I like to run it. And I think the kids see that too. And they see you putting trust in who you work with. It's the same with their line mates, right? So if we have a superstar at center, he needs his two wings to really carry that line and make it most effective. And so if he's trying to do it all, it's not going to work. So we just open lines. We talk about it all the time. We meet a lot. We have, weekly film sessions, and there's a lot that goes into the season. But end of the day, I tell the guys, and this is super cheesy, but I tell them, I have two goals for you coming through my program. Number one, you're going to learn to love each other. And so you can imagine telling 14 to 18-year-old hockey players that they're going to, by the end of the season, they're going to, be comfortable telling each other they love them. And then number two, I want to be invited to their wedding someday. And I know that if those two things happen, they've had a positive experience, and that good things are going to come out of that. If they're a cohesive group, good things are going to come out.
Obviously, that is a great thing to hear, Coach. Now, let's go ahead. Let's have a little fun with some quick fire questions
Yep.
before we wrap up. Are you ready for this? All right. So the first question: if you could have dinner with any hockey player, past or present, who would it be?
Wayne Gretzky.
That's always a great choice. All right. To the next one. What's your pregame ritual, and do you have any superstitions as a coach? I know players do.
Yeah. Pregame ritual would always be, I don't know if I have a pregame ritual, but I do have, I guess the biggest thing for me would be what I wear. And so it's the shoes that I wear. I have two sets of shoes that I wear, and my guys tell me I have great shoe game. So they're purple and gold, or purple and white, Nikes that I'll wear. I've got to wear the same hat. I go out first when I leave the locker room. And so the coaches know that too. There's an order in which we go out, and if that gets messed up. But I'm a creature of habit when it comes to like the bus and all that kind of stuff too, making sure I'm the last one out of the locker room when we load the bus, just double check everybody's locker so we don't forget anything, those types of things.
That's nice. Now, if you weren't coaching hockey, what would you be doing?
That's a really good one. I think I would be, and I wouldn't be good at this, but probably a fishing guide up at my cabin, or running a resort. My siblings, especially my brother-in-law, is a good fisherman, would tell me I'd be better at running the resort than I would be being a fishing guide.
And lastly, this is a fun one. If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Teleport. I hate flying, and I know it's a necessary evil. My family gives me a lot of crap about it. I'd rather drive. And so if I need to get somewhere fast, it would be teleporting.
And now I know in Minnesota, it does snow during the winters. So do you prefer driving during the summer, or do you prefer driving during the winter?
I'm good driving at all weather, I guess. I think for me, especially when I'm flying somewhere, if there's bad weather, I check the weather reports, and I'm telling my wife, it's only a little bit longer to drive. But, I think for us, the snow question is funny right now, because as the athletic director, spring sports are the hardest for me because we have to do a lot of rescheduling, and we've had snow all week this week. So It's not just in the winter. So it snows in April here too.
Yeah, I like it when it's cold during the winter, and I like it when it snows. Unfortunately, with the way that the weather is coming around now that we're getting into spring, I'm sure I'm gonna see less of that.
Mhm.
Um, and then, Coach, before we finish up, I just want to ask two more questions. And what has been the most rewarding part of being a coach, and what keeps you motivated after a season?
I think the most rewarding thing is the stories when our alumni come back, and I tell them this all the time. Like, you're going to remember, some of the big moments that you play, and some of those games. You're not oftentimes not going to remember a Thursday night game in December, but like the stuff that they come back and when we have the alumni hockey games, the stuff that the guys are talking about in the locker room, it might be a quirky thing that you said in a speech or something that you never knew happened that did, or a guy forgot a skate, whatever it might be. But just those funny stories of connection, and when the guys are talking about that and when they come back, and you see it, that genuine sense of team, sense of belonging that these guys have for the rest of their lives. And so, like, I had, when I was at St. Paul Academy, we went to the state tournament for the first time in the history of the school. In the summer, one of my players got married. And so to be there and then, sitting at a table with a bunch of my former players and their girlfriends, fiancés now, and like they're telling stories about that team. I think that's when you're in it for the right reasons. That's when you're glad that your wife is there to hear those stories and to see the impact that we can have on
And so, Coach Funk, the last question I am going to ask you here before we do wrap up this episode. Obviously, I know there's a big push right now to grow the sport of hockey, both professionally and at the grassroots levels. What do you think? And I know Minnesota is almost completely full. It's the state of hockey in the United States. But what do you think will be the next key thing to grow high school hockey in the United States?
I think there's two things that we need to do. Number one, we need to continue to challenge ourselves and make it affordable and approachable. I think there's a lot of programs in Minnesota that are doing it the right way for youth, for mites and the youngest kids, and making that free when they start. But I think as we go up, I think there's some families that are making choices to get out because they're not on the top teams or top levels. And so that's when the price point gets hard. So I think that's number one. And number two, I'm biased because I am a girl dad. I have two daughters, and my oldest doesn't play, but my youngest plays. And I think there's a lot of good things that are happening on the girls' side, but we need to make sure we keep our focus on it and continue to grow that side of the game because we are seeing numbers dwindle when they get to high schools. And right now, the number of high school teams in Minnesota is dropping and the number of co-ops is growing. So I think anything that we can do to help grow the girls' game will organically help hockey as a whole.
Coach Funk, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure talking to you about your coaching philosophy, your program at Cretin-Derham Hall, and the state of high school hockey in Minnesota. Best of luck to you and your team in the upcoming season that you guys do have coming next year.
I appreciate it, Patrick. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.